Well, let's look at Romans 8, verse 1 this morning. Romans 8, verse 1, it says, "There is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh on account of sin. He condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally or naturally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." Now, before this, we're not going to take time to read it in chapter 7. You can go back and read it. But Paul is basically giving an illustration of the person, Christian, but walking in the body and dealing with things that your flesh wants to do, that your unregenerate nature wants to do, but your spirit wants to do what's right, but your flesh wants to do something else. And he said, who's going to, I do the things I don't want to do. The things I don't want to do, those are the things I do. And he's given an illustration and said, what's going to save me from this? And he says, thank God, Christ Jesus. Jesus will do it. So therefore, then he comes into verse 1. And so let's go back to verse 1. This is how he's coming into verse 1. He says, "There is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit." Let's look at, skip down to verse 4. It says that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, or naturally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. So there's a difference between being carnally minded or naturally minded and being spiritually minded. There's a difference between walking according to the Spirit, or the spiritual nature, according to what the Spirit of God has said and is leading, and our renewed spirit is leading, and according to the flesh or to the natural. In other words, you can walk your life out in the natural and just walk like this is all there is, or we can walk according to the spiritual, not only just according to the Spirit of God and what he says, but also that there is a spiritual realm, and walk like there is more than what we see. And it says the one is death, just to walk. And of course that means if you just yield to your flesh and all that. But also if you just walk like this is all there is, that there's nothing there. Yeah. It is empty. To where people are like, what's the point of life, right? Because there is nothing there. The natural realm was created out of the spiritual. It is subject to the spiritual. It's not the other way around. It's not like this natural realm is reality. It is a reality. It's not the reality, though, because it was made from something higher. The spiritual realm existed before this natural realm existed. Like you, if you're a woodworker, and you create something out of wood, you existed before the wood, the thing you made out of wood. The wood might have been around before you. I mean, if you got a really old piece of wood, but the what you ended up making, the final product, that came out of you. You existed before the wood. That wood isn't the final reality. You made the thing, and it's not doing anything without you. Well, the spiritual realm has existed forever because God's been forever. This realm, this physical realm, is a reality created from the spiritual, but it is not superseding the spiritual. But if all we think is that there's the natural, well, that's going to lead to wrong. That's going to be wrong. That's going to lead us in a wrong direction. We're going to make decisions that are wrong. We're going to be led wrong because it changes all the time. This world changes all the time, and it's not it is not the solid reality that people without a spiritual perception think it is. You hear people say, well, this is the real world. I mean, okay, there's the spiritual stuff, but we live in the real world, as if the spiritual doesn't affect the real world, the natural world. That's backwards. That's acting like kind of the spiritual is optional, is gratuitous, like you may believe in that, you may not. It doesn't really affect what we know. This is what's real, and we got to deal with reality. That's wrong. I'm not saying we don't have to deal with this realm. We do. But it's subject to the spiritual. It's subject to what always has been, the spiritual realm. If we just interpret this natural realm as just face value, we're going to miss it. We're not going to live our lives. We're not going to be able to live our lives like we ought to. So verse 6 says, for to be carnally minded is death, naturally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Which one sounds better? Not a trick question. Carnally minded is death, spiritually minded is life and peace. Spiritually minded, life and peace sounds a lot better than death. At least any sane person. Well, evidently we can decide which path we're going to be on, but it takes being aware. Because if you just wake up and just do what everybody else is doing, the majority of the world is just walking naturally. And if we're taking our advice and our direction and our cues and our emotion, well, they're upset about this, so I better be upset. Well, where's their perspective? What we need to calibrate. Like, what am I following? How am I living my life? What am I looking to take these cues? Because if it's this temporal world, well, we know that's changing all the time. And you have a bunch of people that don't necessarily know God. They don't have an eternal perspective. They don't even believe in spiritual things. And then to take your cues from that, well, yeah, you're going to be following the same way. And the Bible said that's not a good place. Not saying everything in the natural world is bad. Of course, we live in the natural world. But the only way you can really enjoy the natural world and walk this life out is if you understand who we are related to the spiritual realm. Who we are related to God. If we don't believe there's a God, we're totally off track. But then there's all kinds of places where you could be where, you may believe in a God, but you don't believe he cares about you. You believe that he cares about you, but he's not really, totally for you. So how we are walking, we're coming into 2026. We're in 2026. How we're going to walk this year out, or I should say the results we get, what we experience, is at least partially going to be how we deal with these type of things, how we're looking at life, how are we making decisions, how are we walking, how are we perceiving this natural realm and what things happen in it related to what the Bible says and what is real spiritually. Because if we're spiritually minded, it's going to lead to life and peace, which is really what people are searching for. Life, peace. People don't want death, but here, right, it just says if you go after the ones, it's going to lead to death. And it's not going to lead to anything that's, edifying or satisfying in its highest degree. Walking according to what God has said in his word, and according to being to the spiritual realm is going to bring the most edifying life that we could lead. Look at Matthew 16:24. it says, then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. So notice it says a number of things. If anyone desires, go back to verse 24, Jesus said, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. You know, you could add all kinds of stuff to that, but deny himself, that means you're not going to do what you want to do. You're going to necessarily be walking according to the flesh, walking according to the natural, walking according to just this. You're going to come after him. It says, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. Take up his cross. That doesn't mean you're just suffering for everything. That means you're doing what the Lord would have you to do, but you have a perspective. You wouldn't do this if you didn't have a spiritual perspective. If you didn't believe in Jesus, you wouldn't do that. So automatically, you're stepping into a place where you're walking according to something beyond what you can see and something beyond the natural. Something beyond what we would desire and ourselves. And I don't know. Don't make this like a works thing, a negative thing this morning. Take the Bible for what it's saying. It's just, we're simply putting the light on, is our perspective a spiritual perspective or a natural perspective? Don't make it a religious thing. See, religion is made, well, you don't, this is the list of don'ts and this is the list of do's. If you do that, you're still in the natural. If it's just based on the outward, it's not really walking spiritually minded. It's still trying to produce something natural. So take that off the table and just come and look at it like there is a spiritual realm. God himself has reconciled the world, all mankind, to himself through Jesus. Now it's up to people to act on that and to believe on that and to accept it so that they come into relationship with God. But now we're walking on this earth. We're like, what are we doing? We can go and just get all into the natural and just be like, I'm right with God and it's spiritual, but that's for later, but I'm dealing with all this natural. See, that's still being naturally minded rather than spiritually minded. If while we're here in the natural, we're more spiritually minded, it's going to lead to life and peace. We're going to walk where we ought to walk because God will help us do that. It's not, see, Jesus already made us right with God. So we're not earning that. So much of religion is trying to get to where they're good enough that when they die, that they make it to heaven. Well, if you understand the gospel, you understand God already reconciled us to himself through Jesus. If we believe on him, believe that God has raised him from the dead, declare that he is Lord, we're right with God. We're made right with God. So, but it still applies. What we read in Romans, that's written to Christians. And Paul said there that to be carnally or naturally minded is going to be death. He's not talking to non-Christians, he's talking to Christians. So if we're like that, even though we're saved, even though we could still experience stuff that's not good because we're just acting like this is all there is, even though we've been redeemed from it, even though we should be living differently. And I'm not talking about just our behavior, I'm talking about our mindset. That we have a choice to be like, wait, we had to calibrate when it's a good time to calibrate. When we come into a new year, how am I walking through the day? I'm not talking about performance. I'm talking about even how we look at things. Because if we're carnally minded and we look at things, if we look at things just through a natural perspective, we'll experience maybe negative emotions and anxiety and fear that we wouldn't have to if we would just look at everything through the right lens. Just that, like nothing even that you did. You just wake up and everybody else is getting upset about stuff and you're like, yeah, but I see it this way. You could bypass all that other people are experiencing because they're looking at it naturally. You're experiencing it spiritually. You're looking through the lens of God. You're saying, God, I'm not doing my own thing anyway. I'm going to do what you want me to do because I believe that. Because I believe that that's the best way. Well, automatically, you got to be walking in faith to do that. It's real easy just to not walk in faith. You just got to do what everybody else is doing generally. Look at Matthew 16:24 again. When Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. See, let me interject this again here. When people say that, let him deny himself. People are thinking, okay, should I say that or not? I'm going to bypass that. Okay, but here's the thing. People will oftentimes look at, when they talk about denying themselves, they're just thinking physically again, naturally. And like they're earning something with God. But it's not talking about earning anything with God. Jesus already earned everything with God. Anything we do in this regard is it's helping us to be more in tune with God. It's not, well, I'm going to not do something so then I'm earning points with God. See, that's works. Jesus already took care of that. If we're thinking like that, we're thinking wrong. You can't earn anything with God. Now, you can flow more with God, which will lead to more life and peace. But us like putting some away because I'm trying to like get points with God, that's not helping anything. God sees everything. He sees the motive. And in fact, if we're doing that, we're automatically selfish and we're doing it for the wrong reasons. God knows that. And it's not a game show anyway. God, it's not about like trying to do the best for God. In a natural way. See, that's carnal. That's natural. You can't do it. If we understand what Jesus did, we couldn't pay that price. His blood was the only way we could be right with God. So if we realize that we're walking through, now I want to please God, I want to walk with him, I want to think like he thinks. Now there's certain things that are going to try to distract me and take me away. If I understand that if I go down that path, it's going to just lead to death. And I have actually the ability to shun that and say no, not because it's just earning me something with God, but because I want to live the best life I can live. I don't want to experience the death associated with that. I don't want to experience the fears and thoughts and shame and things with certain things. And I want to bypass that and go on with God. So I'm just going to live according to a different perspective. So you're denying yourself, denying what you would want to do, denying what our flesh would want to do, but not in a carnal way, just saying, hey, I live in this fallen body, and there's things around me that are fallen, and I realize that this isn't all there is, and there's a reality beyond this, and this is going to try to distract me. I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to live according to what God would have me to do. By God's grace, with his help, Lord, help me do it. I'm going to experience something a lot different than if I would just go down the path of just living in the natural. So Jesus said, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross. I mean, you take up what he would have you to do, which you're going to have to look at it spiritually to do that. He said, and follow me. Verse 25, whoever desires to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. In other words, if you try to hold on to what, again, you think is natural, you're grasping on something that isn't really the highest reality, and you're actually going to end up in a worse situation. But ever you lay down this life, lose his life, not necessarily that you're laying it down like you're dying, but you're living your life for God, for his sake, you will actually find the way you're supposed to live because you are living according to the spiritual part. You're not living according to the natural. So it's the more we go and try to live in the natural, the less of the life God would have us to experience, we're going to experience. But the more we put that aside, realize that there's a higher reality, that the more we're spiritually minded instead of naturally minded, we're going to experience more life and peace in 2026. Verse 26, for what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Again, naturally, if you gain everything that you see here, but you don't have right relationship with God, you've lost everything. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? You can't give anything. I can't. Not possible. For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. So there is something beyond just that sentence. The Son of Man, who's Jesus, will come in the glory of his Father with his angels. Those are all spiritual things. And then he will reward each according to his works. So that reward, that's beyond anything you see here. To even walk there, you got to believe, you have a spiritual perspective more than this natural. To even walk like that, you're already walking in faith. You're walking according to something beyond what we see here. Let's skip down to 2 Corinthians 4, verse 16. Give you a second to get there. 2 Corinthians, go ahead. It says, therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing. What's your outward man? What you see, what I see, that's our outward man. The inward man is being renewed day by day. That's the person you don't see. Look at verse 17. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, in other words, the stuff you experience in this natural is only for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. That means stuff that's going on in the natural realm, if we have the right perspective and are doing the right things, like what Jesus said, that you're losing your life for his sake. It says it is working, our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. In other words, what we're doing in the natural is working in the spiritual, while we do not look at the things which are seen. Would that be the natural? We're not looking at the things that are seen, but we're looking at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are, what's that word? Temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Everybody say temporary. You understand he's talking about the things in this world, and he's saying they're temporary. Everything that we wake up and see in media, on the news, on social media, everything that we're seeing, just the natural, these chairs, these lights, the keyboard, our clothes, our phones, even our body, it's all temporary. In other words, this whole physical realm is temporary. Well, if it's temporary, anything that you say is temporary is not real stable, strong, anything you want to base your life on, right? Like, if a company offered you a lifetime guarantee, but they said, by the way, we're only here for 6 months, that lifetime guarantee is worth maybe 6 months. It's not worth anything. Well, we look around and we're like, well, these things have been here for 200 years or 300. That's not a long time. Forever is a long time. And if we look around and we're basing decisions and walking according to this, which shifts and changes all the time, we know that. You just got to wake up, walk, you see things change. Oh, you thought this was the case. Oh, wait, now it's not. That's all temporary. That's all natural. Well, what did we read originally in Romans? If you're naturally minded, it leads to death. If you base everything on something that's temporary, you're not going to get the best result. So we need to walk according to something that's a lot stronger than temporary. And if we go through life and we're making decisions and interacting with people based on something that's temporary, you realize we could blow up our life based on something that's temporary. Like an emotion. You get mad at somebody at work that you've been a good job and everything, but you get mad, blow up at somebody, storm out and quit. And if we would have waited 10 minutes or had a donut or something and just chilled, we would have been okay. But something that was temporary, we made a decision, and all of a sudden, we're looking for a job when there was no reason to look for a job. We could have looked for a job when we still had a job. Just a much stronger position to be in. Could have had a relationship with somebody, did something on a misunderstanding or whatever, we say things, do things, and all of a sudden that relationship's just crippled based on something that was temporary. If we would have had a different perspective, maybe we could have walked differently so that we could have held on to certain things in the natural because we're walking according to the spiritual. But it was temporary, and temporary things can put enough pressure on you to make you make decisions that we regret. They can cause us to make decisions that aren't good for us in 10 years. But they're temporary. Well, if we're walking according, and we realize everything we see is temporary. So something happens that's temporary, even in the context of the longer temporary of the earth. I mean, it's super temporary. We're not talking about 100 years. We're talking about 5 minutes. It can steal us to where we're like, wait a minute, I'm not going to jump over there. This is going to pass, and I'm going to back up. I'm going to go to God. I'm going to get calibrated because I don't want to blow something up for 15 years when it was a 5-minute thing. And when the smoke settled, I realized I was wrong anyway. And they weren't wrong. Or maybe we were both wrong, which is usually the case. But God knows this. But if we just walk according to just these temporary things, the things that are seen, it's so tempting. I mean, we can go through Christmas, we can talk about Jesus and how he came, and now it's all about him, and then we hit January 1st and let's get back to business. And then we're showing up in December again and the wonder of people in the natural, or the wonder of the season, and even if they're just slowing down and thinking about what is real and important, quote unquote, and all this stuff, and then they just hit January and go again, and it's another year. What if we just went through the year and had that same perspective and being every day, I'm calibrating that this is all temporary, this is all natural. I'm living with that reality that there is a spiritual realm, that God is who he said he was, Jesus is who he said he was, I'm who I am to God, through Jesus because of what the Bible said. I'm going to walk every day with that consciousness. Well, that leads to a lot more life and peace. I'm paraphrasing this. I don't remember. I never really heard who said this. And so this is just a paraphrase of something that, heard once. But somebody said something like this. You can plan to live life as if you're going to live it out. Because, especially in charismatic churches, we always think, well, when's the rapture going to come? I think there's a whole lot of charismatic people that are really surprised that we're in 2026. Charismatic was a movement in the late 60s, 70s, the movings of the gifts of the Spirit in all mainline denominations, all throughout the world, just a worldwide movement, and people coming in and, people thinking Jesus is going to come back any day, and go through all this, and people are like, it's imminent. And boy, when we hit 2000, it was gonna, wow. I mean, that's going to be the end of it. 2000, all the computers are going to shut down and all that stuff. And here we are in 2026. Yeah, we're still here. And I think that surprises a lot of people. If you lived before, is how did we get here? But we're here. So we thought, people are like, there's no way we're going to be in 2026. 2000, we're out. But you're supposed to plan like you're going to live your life out. Okay, plan like you're going to be here. Plan as if you're not going to leave the earth. Because, people in the 70s, 80s, still, you go back 5 years, 6 years. Almost 6 years. COVID was almost 6 years ago. That's crazy. But people are like, the world's ending. And if you start thinking we're not going to be here, you might make some dumb decisions. Now, you're always tempted to be led by the Spirit of God, but if you start thinking, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that, we're not going to be here anyway, then you're here. Well, God's still merciful and he's good, and he'll walk you through, but we plan like we're going to be here. But you live like this is your last day. And what do I mean like that? Mean by that? It's not, I mean, if it was really your last day, sure, you might be like, hey, bye, see ya. You may do a few things, but in essence, if we live like we are going to go on, and there is a spiritual, and this carnal isn't anything, then there's certain things that you won't let go. You won't let it play out like it is. You deal with it because you don't want to leave like that. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's something that's said. In other words, if you live like there is more than this earth, and there is more than the natural, you're not carnally or naturally minded, but you're spiritually minded. In other words, you're going to go on, but you're living then according to the Word. What would I be living like according to what the Bible said now? I won't, like, if there's certain things I do that I don't like, I'm going to do what I need to do to make it right before I move on, because at any point, I'm not saying you're going to drop dead at any point, but you're living with the mindset that I wouldn't want to go, if this were my last day, I wouldn't want to leave that undone. So I'm going to change the way I go through it. I'm going to be like, no, we got to get this settled before the day's over. Because if tomorrow I don't have it, well, I'm going to live different. I'm living all the time like I'm ready to go. Not in a morbid sense. Not like you're going to die every day. But it's a mindset. Like that means I'm living, for my time here, I'm living spiritually minded. Well, I'm going to have a lot more life and peace, because at any point it's like, yeah, man, I should have done that 5 years ago. I should have gone and had that conversation. I should have talked. I'm living like it. I'm already like, well, if I did something, I'm already trying to make it right, or I'm living like that. Now I'm planning like I'm going to be here to the best of my ability. Again, that's a balance, because people act like there's no God sometimes. I got to have all this stuff hoarded up because, there's a balance there. But at the same time, if you act like we're never going to be here, we might hit a place where we're like, gosh, I wish I would have acted like I would be on the earth still, because I would have done something differently. Well, everybody has a life that's different, and there's no perfect path. We just have to be led by God. So it's not like we are always acting like tomorrow's the last day, because, well, if tomorrow is literally the last day, yeah, there's certain things, maybe you go have a big meal or something, and there's a difference. But at the same time, you have a mindset that in general, I'm living spiritually minded. I'm not living like it's just natural, because that natural could change, and I may not be a part of it at one point. We live like we're ready to go. Well, that's part of being, think about it. I read something, even in the natural. I read somebody was saying something about their struggle in a certain area with life. They were addicted to some things. And they made this statement. They were like, they always felt like if something was going to happen, they'd have to get detox so that they could be at their best to do that. And now that they're free from that, it's like I'm always ready to go. It's like it's so much freer, because I don't have to be like, well, all right, well, if I'm going to do that, I got to go through all these steps to get back to even and then do it. Well, if you live like that, you're always kind of behind. It's like, well, I know this. It's in other words, you're like, you have baggage. I know there's these things I should be taking care of. And I get it. Everybody has that to some degree. We're human. We're working on it as far as everything is in its perfect space. But I'm talking about a mentality and approach according to what the Word says. If we're walking according to spiritual things and a spiritual mentality, then it's not like, oh, you mean tomorrow? All right. Well, I have this and this person. I got to do this. I got to do this right, and I got to get all this stuff caught up. because I'm not living there. I'm basically acting like I'm just going through this realm like this all there is, and if something really comes down, then I'm going to get stuff to where I really would want it to happen, to be. Well, in one sense, I'm just acting like this is all there is, and we're just biding time. Like we talk about, it's a beginning of a year. You realize, I mean, if Jesus doesn't come back during this year sometime, we're going to be here next year. I mean, people may be in different places. Situations could change. But in other words, on the earth, everybody's going to be here early January, and it's going to be another year. And if we have the mentality, well, I'll do that next year, I'll do that later, or that is not really important. I'm just going to Just go to work, come home, do whatever activities, and like that is life. It's not life. That's part of it. That's temporary, though. We're not going to do that forever. I don't care who you are, whatever you're doing now is not going to be done in 150 years for everybody. If the earth is still going like it is in 150 years, not a single one of us is going to be doing it. All AI and all preserving your mentality and inserting it into another body aside, I'm talking about normal life, not a normal human body is going to be around. If we look at it this way, in other words, nobody from 200 years ago is walking the earth right now. Not a single one. So we're not going to do this forever. Whatever we're doing now, if we just get natural, because it's so easy, right? Man, I got this appointment and I got this, and okay, we'll take this. Got to go get this, and I'll go out to eat here, and then, got this school activity, and we got this project and whatever, and before you know it, it's December. But that's all just natural. Like that's just carnal. That's all temporary. How I look at it and what I do with it. But what God is eternal, and spiritual things are eternal, and that's going on right now. So if I come in going, wait a minute, is this even what I'm supposed to be doing? How do I look at this? Is this even worth getting upset about? Is this anything I need to make a decision about? Because I don't even know if this is going to be here next week. If I look past that, look into the spiritual realm, there may be things that all those natural things are distracting me from doing the thing that if it was the last day, I would drop everything and do that. Here's what people do. Something happens, they're like, well, I better get this set. I got to go talk to this person. I got to do this. I didn't ever started doing this because all this normal stuff just keeps going and distracting. And you know it as well as I do. I like to do that thing that's important, but I got to do this. But if we're just naturally minded, that carnally minded, that leads to, in the ultimate, it's just death. But if I'll back up and be like, Lord, help me today. Show me what I need to do today. Help me to deal with anything that I'm dealing with. Show me. If there's something I need to take care of now so that I'm at more peace. And I don't have this laundry list of things that, I better get it done. If stuff happens, then I have to get it done. Well, now I'm living free. Now I can actually focus on, Lord, what is it you'd want me to do? Because I know I took care of this and this and this, and I'm ready to go into the degree that the ideal is if this were the day that Jesus were coming back, if this were the day that I've lived out my life, not me, a person, old age, whatever, and ready to go on, that I would be doing today pretty much what I'm doing anyway. That you would do what you were going to do anyway because you've dealt with all those big things. Sure, you might go out to eat. You might be like, hey, this is it. But the big things are taken care of. Sure, you might be like, hey, bye, or whatever. But you've dealt with those things to where you're just living there. Like, basically, you're doing what the Lord would have you to do today because you're already in that mindset of there's a spiritual and these things are real and I'm walking in faith. So because I'm walking in faith, I'm taking care of what God would have me to do today. Because it's a cliche, but it's true. Like all cliches generally. You only got today. We don't have yesterday for sure. We don't have tomorrow. But the way we're going to truly look at that is if we have an eternal perspective, if we have a spiritual perspective, because this natural world is temporary. Look at 2 Corinthians 5, verse 6. It says, "For we are always confident knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight." So we're not walking by what we see. We're not walking by the natural. We're walking by faith. Well, what is that? Spiritual. Faith is of the heart. Faith is spiritual. Faith is beyond. I have a sign in my bedroom up on the ledge we just talked about last night. It says faith beyond what the eyes can see. Right up. Wake up, first thing. It's up on the ledge up there on the far wall in our bedroom. Got it in Pennsylvania like 10 years ago. Put it up there. Big letters. It says faith beyond what the eyes can see. Walking in faith is by definition you're believing something and then you're walking. Here it says you're walking by faith. You're not walking by what you see. So you're not walking by the carnal. You're not walking by the natural. You're not being led by that. You're not dealing with those things. You're not letting that dictate it. You are walking by something that is higher and greater. You're walking by the spiritual realm, by who God is, who you are to God, and you're making decisions, both short-term and long-term, based on that. You live that way day to day so that whatever happens, you're already walking by faith the way you know how. You're not being dictated by something that's temporary, by something that's not going to be here. Have you ever, don't raise your hand, don't answer out loud, because I know everybody in here probably has, because you're human. Have you ever made a decision based on something short term? Maybe it was pressure, maybe it was a sale, maybe it was, what somebody said, and it didn't age well. You realized you didn't have to make that decision. You shouldn't have made that decision. You made it on false pretenses because you thought a situation looked a certain way, but it wasn't that way, but you went and made the decision, and you made it based on something that in retrospect, because hindsight's 20/20, even the natural, what you made the decision on was temporary, not even what you thought it was, but you deal with the ramifications later, and you wish you could have changed it. Everybody, if you live a long time, you know that's happened. Well, you can't do anything about that, but you can do something about where we are now. How many times are we tempted to be moved by something in this realm or situations or pushing that cause you to try to make a decision based on this temporary, and it's not peaceful, and it's not the right thing that's going to play out well in the time to come? Instead of moving over here and saying, in the light of what I know about God and His Word and past, and that this is all temporary, I'm going to take a different path. That is more life and peace. That is more settled. That is more stable. I'm not exposed to or vulnerable to being pulled so easy because I'm like, this is doing this, but I'm just going to wait. I'm going to go over here and make these decisions based on this because this is actually stable. When all this settles down, I will have still made the right decision over here because that is eternal, not temporary. I mean, how many things we don't know. 2026, we don't know everything that's going to happen or anything that's going to happen in 2026 generally. We may know some things that we think are going to happen, like, we're going to take certain trips or whatever, but the Bible says, don't talk about what you're going to do tomorrow like confidently. You don't know what's going to happen. What we do know is who God is, who we are to Him, and so if we'll go in with that attitude, if we'll walk through it with that attitude, every situation, every day, Lord, what do you want me to do? Is there something I need to take care of today? Is there something I need to do today that I don't want left done next week? We can walk in a place where it's much more life. It's much more peace. We're not pulled off. And we don't get in those places where this little hurricane, tempest in a teacup, goes away, it didn't affect anything that we were really doing because we are walking according to what the Word says and according to what God's Spirit is leading. Peace, life, ready to go.